At the clinic, my wife grabbed my hand so tight her nails dug into my skin. Her eyes were wide with fear as she whispered, "Don't trust that nurse." Before I could even ask what she meant, the lights flickered above us and then went completely out. The entire room dropped into darkness, and in that blackness, I felt someone grab my arm. If you want to know what happened next, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 42 years old, a school teacher, and I've been married to my wife Claire for 15 years. She is the heart of my world, kind, loyal, and always the one who seems stronger than me in times of trouble. But in recent months, her health has been shaky, and we have been in and out of the local clinic for tests and follow-ups. That day, I thought it would be simple. Claire had been feeling tired, and we just needed to check her blood work. I drove us to the clinic after work, holding her hand in the waiting room like I always did. But I noticed something different about her that afternoon. She was tense, her shoulders stiff, her breathing uneven. I leaned closer and asked softly, "Are you okay?" She gave me a small nod, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "Something feels off," she whispered. I tried to brush it off as nerves, but the unease in her voice stayed with me. When Nurse Jenna walked past us, I caught the way Claire's gaze followed her. The nurse smiled politely, but it felt wrong, too sharp, too practiced. Claire's grip on my hand tightened again. She leaned closer and whispered, "I don't like her." I tried to reassure her. "She's just doing her job," I said. But even as I spoke, I felt a ripple of doubt. There was something about the way the nurse glanced back at us before disappearing into the hallway. It was as if she knew something we didn't. We were called into the exam room a few minutes later. Claire's hand was shaking as I helped her sit down. I thought it was just her illness making her weak. I didn't realize then that she had sensed something I could not see yet. That was when everything began to spiral. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant, and the hum of the fluorescent lights above gave the air a restless buzz. Claire sat on the exam table, her hands twisting together in her lap, while I stood beside her trying to look calm. But inside, I could feel her unease settling into me. She had always been the one to notice things before I did, the one who trusted her instincts, even when I brushed them aside. Now her warning echoed in my head. "Don't trust that nurse." Nurse Jenna stepped into the room holding a clipboard. Her smile was polite, her voice calm, but something about the way her eyes flicked back and forth between me and Claire made my stomach turn. She asked Claire the usual questions, symptoms, sleep patterns, diet, but her tone felt rehearsed, almost like she was reading lines she had practiced too many times. Claire's answers were short, her voice shaking slightly. I squeezed her hand to steady her, but my own palm was damp with sweat. Then, in the middle of Jenna's questions, the lights above flickered. Once, twice, and then, without warning, everything went dark. The sudden silence of the machine stopping made my ears ring. Claire let out a small gasp, and I heard the sharp thump of something metal falling to the floor. "Stay calm," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. But before I could even move, I felt a hand clamp tightly around my arm. The grip was strong, deliberate, not accidental. My body stiffened, and my heart pounded in my chest. "Daniel," Claire whispered, her voice breaking in the dark. "Someone's there." I pulled against the grip, but it held firm. I couldn't see a thing. The room felt too small, the air too heavy, and Claire's frightened breaths made my panic worse. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. The grip loosened for a moment, then tightened again, as if the person was daring me to fight back. "Daniel, it's her," Claire said, her voice trembling. "I know it's her." I reached into my pocket with my free hand, fumbling for my phone. My fingers slipped, shaking, before I finally managed to press the power button. The weak glow of the screen lit up just enough to reveal the outline of Nurse Jenna standing inches away from me, her hand locked on my arm. Her face was half hidden in shadow, but her eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. "What are you doing?" I demanded. My voice cracked with fear, but I forced myself to sound strong. She didn't answer right away. She just tilted her head slightly, the corner of her mouth twitching like she was holding back words she shouldn't say. Finally, in a low voice, she whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Claire let out a sharp cry and pulled me back toward her. My phone screen dimmed, and for a moment, her face disappeared into the dark again. The air felt colder now, like the blackout had drained the warmth out of the room. I pulled free of Jenna's grip and stepped in front of Claire, shielding her with my body. "Stay behind me," I said firmly. I didn't care if my knees were shaking or if my voice wavered. Claire needed me to stand strong, and I wasn't about to fail her. From the corner of the room came another sound, the soft scrape of metal, like a tray being moved. My phone light caught a faint glint of stainless steel on the counter. Syringes, lined up neatly, one already filled. My stomach twisted when I noticed the label on the small vial beside it. It had Claire's name on it, but the dosage was far higher than anything I had ever seen prescribed. Claire's hand clutched the back of my shirt. "Daniel, we need to get out of here," she whispered. Her voice was urgent, breaking. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. I couldn't understand why this was happening, why a nurse who was supposed to heal would stand here in the dark, gripping me like a threat. But I didn't need answers right now. I only needed to get my wife out safely. I turned my eyes back to Jenna. The glow of my phone cast just enough light to show her face. She was still staring, but now the polite mask she wore earlier was gone. Her eyes were cold, her expression hard, as if she was finally showing who she really was. The blackout stretched on, and every second felt longer than the last. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I could feel Claire's fear pressing against my back like a weight. I realized in that moment we were no longer just patients in a clinic. We were targets, caught in something much darker. I took a deep breath, my voice steadying as I said, "Claire, listen to me. Stay right here. No matter what happens, don't move." I could feel her nod against my back. She trusted me completely, and I knew I couldn't let her down. The conflict had begun, and there was no turning back. The blackout held us in its grip, and I could feel every second stretching longer than the last. My phone's weak glow flickered in my hand, the only light keeping us from being swallowed whole by the darkness. Claire clung to me, her fingers gripping the back of my shirt so tightly that it hurt, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Every sense in my body told me this was the moment I had to choose. Either I stayed frozen and let fear win, or I acted. I looked at Nurse Jenna, standing only a few feet away. Her face was half lit, half hidden, but the coldness in her eyes told me this was no accident. Claire's whisper echoed again in my mind. "Don't trust that nurse." My wife had been right from the start. I should have listened sooner. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Claire, listen to me. Stay close, but don't move unless do you understand?" "Yes," she breathed, her voice shaking. "Just don't let her touch me." "I won't," I promised. With that, I shifted forward, like phone aimed directly at Jenna. "Step back," I said. "Whatever your plan, it ends now." She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand," she said softly. "She isn't safe here. None of you." Her words twisted my stomach. Was she warning or threatening us? My instincts told me to trust her tone. The air felt heavier with each I knew staying in this room was dangerous. Claire's breathing was shallow, and her body shook against mine. I had to make a decision. Not later, not in another minute, but now. I tightened my grip on my phone and reached toward the counter where the syringes had been laid out. My light glinted off the labels. I squinted and saw it clearly. Claire's name, printed neatly, paired with numbers that didn't make sense. Too high, too dangerous. My chest clenched. "Why is her dosage written like this?" I demanded. My voice was harsher now, filled with anger I didn't know I still had. Jenna's expression hardened, her politeness cracking like glass. "Because she's not supposed to walk out of here," she said flatly. Claire let out a terrified sob, and I felt her shake harder. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I grabbed the tray with my free hand and hurled it against the far wall. The clatter of metal filled the room, syringes scattering across the floor. Jenna flinched, and in that brief moment of surprise, I moved. "Come on," I shouted, pulling Claire off the exam table. My body wasn't strong, but adrenaline carried me forward. We stumbled toward the door, my shoulder bracing against hers. her breath hot and panicked. Behind us, Jenna's voice cut through the dark, low and sharp. "You'll regret this, Daniel." Her words chilled me to the bone, but I didn't stop. I reached the door and yanked at the handle. For one awful second, I feared it was locked. Then it gave way, and we staggered into the hallway. The corridor was dimly lit by red emergency lights flickering overhead. Shadows stretched along the walls, making everything feel distorted, unsafe. The clinic that had once seemed routine now looked like something out of a nightmare. Empty chairs lined the hallway, and papers littered the floor, tossed by the sudden blackout. Claire pressed against me, whispering frantically, "Daniel, we have to get out. We can't stay here." "I know," I said, my voice sharp but controlled. "Stay right with me. Don't let go of my hand." We moved quickly, my eyes scanning every shadow, every doorway. The silence was broken only by the sound of our hurried footsteps and Claire's ragged breathing. But in that silence, I could also hear something else, the soft echo of footsteps behind us. I turned my head just enough to catch a glimpse. In the distance, framed by the red light, Jenna was following. Her pace was calm, deliberate, as if she knew she had all the time in the world. My pulse hammered in my ears. I realized then that this wasn't over. She wasn't going to stop just because I had broken her plan. She was going to keep coming until she finished what she started. I pulled Claire closer and whispered fiercely, "We're not stopping. No matter what, we keep moving." She nodded, her tear-streaked face pale in the faint glow. Her courage amazed me, even as fear gripped us both. That was the moment everything changed. I was no longer just a husband standing in a clinic room. I had become a shield. I made my choice, and I knew I would fight with every ounce of strength left in me to get Claire out of that building alive. And as the sound of Jenna's footsteps grew closer, I held Claire's hand tighter and braced myself for what was coming next. The emergency lights flickered down the hallway, casting everything in a dim red glow that made the walls feel like they were bleeding. Claire clutched my hand as we hurried forward, her steps unsteady but determined. I kept glancing over my shoulder, and every time I did, I saw her, Nurse Jenna, walking calmly behind us. She wasn't running. She wasn't shouting. She just followed with a steady, deliberate pace, like a predator who already knew her prey was trapped. "Daniel, she's still coming," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. "I see her," I said firmly. "Don't stop. Just keep moving." We rounded a corner, and for a moment, I thought we might have shaken her. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement again. She was there, her silhouette cutting through the red haze, closer than before. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear Claire's breathing. We passed through the waiting area, empty chairs lined up like silent witnesses, magazines scattered across the floor. Everything that had once seemed normal about this clinic now looked twisted, wrong. "Exits this way," I muttered, pulling Claire toward the glowing green sign at the end of the hall. The door looked like salvation, but just as we reached it, the lock clicked. I yanked on the handle, but it didn't budge. Locked. My stomach sank. Claire's voice rose in panic. "Daniel, what do we do? We can't get out." I pulled her close, forcing myself to stay calm. "We'll find another way. Don't lose focus." Behind us, Jenna's footsteps grew louder. She finally spoke, her voice echoing down the hallway, low and steady. "You weren't supposed to see that syringe. You weren't supposed to question anything. If you had just trusted the process, you could have walked away tonight." Her words made my blood run cold. Claire buried her face against my shoulder, trembling. I turned, my phone light shaking in my hand. "You're supposed to heal people. What are you doing? Why her? Why my wife?" Jenna stopped a few steps away, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "Because she isn't supposed to leave here. Some people are easier to silence when no one is watching." Claire gasped, and I felt fury rise in my chest. "Over my dead body," I snapped. I pushed Claire gently behind me and squared my shoulders, standing between her and the nurse. My body was weak, my hands trembling, but something inside me refused to give in. If Jenna wanted Claire, she would have to go through me first. She smiled then, a cold, lifeless smile that made my skin crawl. From her pocket, She pulled out another syringe. The liquid inside glinted in the red light. My stomach turned at the thought of what she had planned. Claire's voice cracked behind me. "Daniel, don't let her near me." "You're safe," I told her. "I promise." With all the strength I had, I raised my phone light higher, shining it directly at Jenna's face. For the first time, her composure slipped. She squinted, stepping back slightly, the syringe trembling in her hand. I saw my chance. I lunged forward, knocking the syringe from her grip. It clattered to the floor, rolling across the tiles. Jenna hissed in frustration, trying to shove past me, but I held my ground. My cane arm braced against her chest, pushing her back with every ounce of strength I could muster. "Run, Claire!" I shouted. But Claire didn't run. Instead, she grabbed the fallen syringe, holding it tightly in her trembling hands. Her fear had turned into something sharper. Determination. Jenna struggled against me, her face twisted in anger. "You don't understand," she growled. "You can't save her. This was decided already." "No," I said, my voice steady now. "Nothing is decided. Not tonight." With one final push, I shoved her back into the wall. Claire darted forward, tossing the syringe down the hall with all her strength. It skidded out of reach, disappearing into the shadows. The sound of commotion erupted from behind us. Other voices, footsteps, people moving toward the noise. The blackout had drawn attention, and now staff and patients were coming out of their rooms. Jenna froze, her mask of calm shattering. For the first time, she looked afraid. "Help!" I shouted, my voice echoing down the hall. "She tried to hurt my wife!" 2 orderlies rushed toward us. Jenna stepped back, her face pale, shaking her head like she had been caught in a lie. "They don't understand," she muttered. "They don't understand what has to be done." But it was too late. The syringe on the floor, the look on her face, the witnesses arriving. It was all over. The orderlies grabbed her, pulling her arms behind her back as she struggled weakly. Claire collapsed against me, sobbing into my chest. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her as tightly as I could. My knees threatened to give out, but I didn't care. She was safe. That was all that mattered. As Jenna's voice faded behind us, swallowed by the chaos of the clinic, I kissed the top of Claire's head. "It's over," I whispered. "You're safe now." For the first time all night, I believed it. The chaos in the clinic finally began to settle. The emergency lights still bathed everything in red, but now there were more people in the hallway. Orderlies, patients peeking nervously out of their rooms, and a doctor rushing forward to take control of the situation. Nurse Jenna had been restrained, her arms pinned behind her back as she shouted words that made no sense. Her calm voice from earlier was gone, replaced with frantic muttering about it had to be done and how no one would believe them. Claire stayed pressed against me, her body trembling as though every ounce of energy had been drained from her. I stroked her hair gently, whispering, "It's over now. You're safe." Even as I said it, my own chest ached from the weight of fear and adrenaline. I wasn't sure if I truly believed my own words, but I needed her to. The doctor who arrived took one look at the syringe rolling on the floor, and then at the fear on Claire's face. His expression darkened. "Take her to security," he ordered the orderlies, "and get the police on the phone immediately." Hearing that gave me a strange sense of relief. It wasn't just in our heads. It wasn't paranoia or nerves. Claire's instincts had been right all along, and now others were seeing the truth too. We were guided to another room, away from the scene. Claire sat down heavily in a chair, her face pale, her eyes red from tears. I knelt beside her, taking her hands in mine. They were cold, shaking, but she gripped me back with surprising strength. "I told you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I told you not to trust her." "You saved us," I said firmly. "If you hadn't spoken up, I would have brushed it off. I would have thought you were just anxious. But you knew. You always know." She let out a shaky breath, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "I was so scared, Daniel. I thought I was going to lose everything." I shook my head and held her even tighter. "Not while I'm here. I promised you when we got married that I'd protect you, and I meant it. Tonight we proved that we're stronger together than anything trying to hurt us." There was silence between us for a few moments, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. The storm had passed, but its shadow still lingered. I could feel my heartbeat slowly calming, though flashes of the night replayed in my mind. The cold grip on my arm, Jenna's eyes in the glow of my phone, and the chilling words she had spoken. Police arrived not long after. We gave our statements, explaining everything that had happened. The syringe, the blackout, the grip on my arm, the words that left no doubt about her intentions. The officers took it all seriously, which eased some of my fear, though I still felt an uneasiness I couldn't shake. Once they left with Jenna in custody, the clinic staff apologized repeatedly, offering to reschedule Claire's tests at another location, but I knew we wouldn't be coming back here. This place, with its red lights and broken trust, would never feel safe again. On the drive home, the silence between us was thick, but meaningful. Claire leaned her head against my shoulder, and I kept one hand on hers the entire ride. When we finally pulled into our driveway, she whispered, "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." I squeezed her hand. "You were the one who saw the danger first. I just acted because I trust you. That's what saved us." Later that night, as we sat together in the quiet of our living room, the weight of what we had faced began to sink in. The house felt different, safer than the clinic, but I could still see the fear in Claire's eyes every time she closed them. I knew it would take time for that fear to fade. It would take time for mine to fade too. But there was also something stronger than fear that stayed with me, a lesson carved deep into my heart. Sometimes the person you love sees danger before you do. Sometimes their instincts are sharper, their warnings clearer, and when they whisper to you, when they beg you to listen, you don't ignore it. You trust them, you believe them, because that trust might be the only thing standing between life and death. I looked at Claire, her head resting against my arm, and I realized something important. Fear is powerful, but love is stronger. Love gives you the strength to face what you never thought you could. It makes you fight when your body wants to collapse. It makes you believe when doubt wants to silence you. That night at the clinic, fear tried to break us, but love carried us through. And now, I want you to remember this. When someone you love tells you they're afraid, listen. Their warning could save your life. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from.